The moment Meghan Markle stepped onto the global stage, cameras followed her every move. Every smile, every gesture, every carefully curated outfit was analyzed, dissected, and celebrated. She had captivated the world, not just as a royal figure, but as a symbol of modern elegance, glamour, and an almost cinematic rise from Hollywood actress to Duchess of Sussex. But what if I told you that behind that poised exterior, behind the smiles for the cameras, there was a secret so explosive that it could rewrite everything we thought we knew about Meghan Markle? What if the Duchess, while carrying the heir to the Sussex legacy, was living a life no one could have imagined, an affair with a mysterious American lover, unfolding in secrecy right under the watchful eyes of the world? Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. It sounds impossible, doesn't it? Too shocking to be true. Yet, as we dig deeper into timelines, private communications, and eyewitness accounts, a troubling picture begins to emerge. A picture that challenges the very narrative of loyalty, trust, and royal propriety we've all assumed. You might be asking yourself, how could this happen? How could someone so public, so scrutinized, maintain such a secret? And what does it mean for the family, for Prince Harry, and for the future of the monarchy? Hold on to that thought, because the answers are stranger than fiction, and they're coming. Picture this: a duchess, radiant in her public appearances, attending charity galas and walking through palace corridors, while simultaneously conducting clandestine rendezvous thousands of miles away. Trips meticulously timed, security protocols bent, and whispers among staff that something was off, something unspoken. How does one balance the expectations of a royal life with the desires of a secret personal life? And more importantly, who would dare confront such a person? The stakes are monumental. We're not talking about casual flirtations here. We're talking about a sustained, carefully orchestrated affair, one that allegedly coincided with her pregnancy, a time meant for personal reflection, bonding, and preparation for motherhood. You may be wondering, who is this American figure? How did he enter the life of Meghan Markle? And why did their paths cross at such a critical moment? The story, as you'll soon see, is layered with intrigue, secrecy, and timing that seems almost too precise to be coincidence. The alleged lover is described by insiders as charismatic, enigmatic, and someone with access to networks and environments Meghan frequented before and after her royal engagements. He wasn't just a name whispered in tabloids. He was allegedly a presence that disrupted routines, caused tension in social circles, and left breadcrumbs that investigators and journalists are only now piecing together. But what's more shocking is not just the affair itself. It's the audacity, the careful orchestration, and the sheer risk involved, particularly when a child's well-being was at stake. Let's step back for a moment. Meghan Markle is no stranger to public scrutiny. Every move she makes is recorded, every appearance cataloged. She's navigated the treacherous waters of fame, celebrity, and royalty simultaneously. Yet, somehow, this secret, if the allegations hold truth, managed to evade the gaze of both the public and the palace's inner circle. That, in itself, raises questions. How could such an affair persist unnoticed? Was it a masterclass in deception, a series of fortunate coincidences, or was there a network of silence, intentional or otherwise, enabling it? These are not idle musings. They are questions that must be asked because the ramifications of the story are immense, not just for Meghan, but for Harry, for the monarchy, and for the public trust that underpins the royal institution. Now, let's examine timing. Pregnancy is often a period where scrutiny intensifies, where every decision is magnified. For a public figure like Meghan, it's no different. Every outfit, every public engagement, every comment in interviews is dissected. Imagine, then, attempting to maintain a private life, one that involves clandestine meetings, encrypted communications, and secret travel. The sheer logistics alone are staggering. According to sources, the alleged affair involved careful planning. Trips to the United States that were framed as professional obligations, meetings scheduled in locations designed to avoid paparazzi and social scrutiny, and interactions limited to trusted intermediaries. There is even speculation that some appearances, which seemed innocent or routine, were meticulously timed to coincide with private rendezvous. It's a picture of secrecy layered atop secrecy, an intricate web that, if exposed, could send shockwaves across social media, the press, and royal circles alike. But why now? Why are these allegations surfacing at this precise moment? The answer lies partly in timing and partly in consequence. The monarchy is facing unprecedented scrutiny in the modern era. Every rumor, every past action, every private decision is now a potential headline. Additionally, as Meghan and Harry continue to navigate their post-royal lives, partnerships, and public projects, the stakes for personal narratives have never been higher. This story matters because it challenges assumptions about transparency, loyalty, and the image cultivated over years. It also raises questions about accountability. Can public figures truly separate their private actions from public perception? Can the truth remain hidden when the stakes are this high? And most importantly, how will those involved respond when hidden truths inevitably surface? Imagine sitting on this information for years, holding the secret knowledge that could alter public perception of a beloved, or at least widely followed, figure. The tension, the secrecy, and the fear of exposure create a narrative that is almost cinematic in scale. Insider accounts suggest that whispers circulated among friends and associates, hints of irregular behavior that, at the time, were dismissed or ignored. But as pieces of the puzzle now come together, the picture becomes harder to ignore. Each new detail, each timeline revelation, each intercepted communication adds a layer of credibility to the allegations. And yet, the full extent of what supposedly transpired remains tantalizingly out of reach, hidden behind encrypted messages, private flights, and the discretion of those who may have witnessed events firsthand. The human element is what makes this story gripping. Picture the emotional turmoil for Prince Harry. Imagine the conflicting loyalties, the protective instincts, and the heartbreak that comes with the possibility that your partner may not have been truthful during such a pivotal period. Now imagine trying to maintain appearances for the public, for the press, for family obligations, all while grappling with these private betrayals. It's a scenario that evokes empathy, shock, and disbelief. And it's exactly this intersection of personal heartbreak and public spectacle that makes the story so compelling, so irresistible to the audience, and so necessary to examine in full detail. But this is only the beginning. The trail of evidence, the names involved, the timing, the intercepted communications, all of it points to a narrative that is far more complicated than a simple story of infidelity. It's a story of power, secrecy, and strategy. It's a story where public appearances are carefully curated masks, and private lives hold truths that could, if revealed, shift public understanding overnight. It's a story that forces the audience to question everything they've believed, to weigh rumor against fact, and to consider the motivations behind both concealment and revelation. And now, here's the cliffhanger that will pull you into the next chapter. One piece of evidence has surfaced, a digital trail, a message, a meeting, that, if verified, could confirm suspicions that many dismissed as impossible. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. How can someone project perfection while hiding a secret so explosive it could shatter everything? That's the question many have been asking since whispers of Meghan Markle's alleged affair began circulating. Because let's be honest, her public persona was flawless. Every photo, every handshake, every wave to the crowd seemed effortless, polished, untouchable. But behind that serene exterior, insiders now claim, a different story was unfolding. A story of deception, clandestine meetings, and calculated moves that no royal protocol could have anticipated. It begins with the image. Meghan Markle was, and still is, a master of presentation. From her first appearances at royal engagements to her carefully staged photos with Prince Harry, every detail was meticulously planned. Observers noticed her posture, the angle of her head, the way she smiled. Nothing appeared accidental. She had mastered the art of public perception to a degree that many world leaders would envy. But perfection, as anyone knows, can be a double-edged sword. For every public moment of grace, there's a private life that may tell a completely different story. And according to multiple anonymous sources, that private life may have included an affair with an American man, timed with near precision during Meghan's pregnancy. Think about that for a moment. Maintaining a secret relationship while pregnant, while under constant scrutiny, while living inside the palace walls. How is that even possible? How could someone navigate those treacherous waters without leaving a trace? Well, insiders say it takes planning, strategy, and a certain fearlessness that borders on audacity. Every trip to the United States, every sudden meeting with friends or colleagues, and even seemingly innocent phone calls were allegedly orchestrated with the precision of a spy operation. Emails were sent from encrypted accounts. Meetings were scheduled during hours when staff were least likely to notice. Flights were booked under innocuous pretenses. It was a world hidden in plain sight. But let's pause for a moment and reflect on the human side of this. Meghan wasn't just a figure on the global stage. She was a woman expecting a child. There are emotional layers here that are staggering. The anticipation of motherhood, the vulnerability of pregnancy, the excitement of preparing for a new life. These are deeply personal experiences. Yet, the allegations suggest that alongside these milestones, there were secret rendezvous, hidden communications, and decisions that may have hurt those closest to her. How does one reconcile the joy of impending motherhood with the thrill and the risk of a clandestine relationship? It's a question that challenges everything we assume about loyalty, trust, and personal morality. Now, consider the contradictions. On one hand, Meghan was publicly devoted, speaking eloquently about family, charity, and responsibility. She represented modern femininity, independence, and a new kind of royal energy. On the other hand, according to allegations, she was allegedly conducting secret meetings that no public eye could see. How does one manage such a dual existence? Is it deception, survival, or a calculated strategy to maintain control over multiple narratives? And for Prince Harry, what must it have felt like to navigate the highs of public adoration while possibly being blindsided by private betrayals? Sources close to the couple have claimed that even palace staff began noticing subtle changes in behavior. There were moments when Meghan seemed distracted, distant, or preoccupied, calls that lasted longer than expected, private meetings that could not be explained. And yet, the veneer of perfection never wavered. To outsiders, everything remained pristine, elegant, flawless. But insiders whispered. They noticed the subtle inconsistencies. They saw the carefully choreographed appearances that didn't quite match her private movements. And though nothing was publicly documented at the time, the breadcrumbs, if pieced together, paint a startling picture. Some have argued that the allure of secrecy is intoxicating. The thrill of doing something forbidden, the adrenaline of maintaining a hidden life. These elements can fuel choices that seem irrational to outsiders. Allegedly, Meghan navigated this tension with a remarkable calm, her public image never showing the slightest hint of chaos. And yet, when we look closer, when we examine timelines of travel, public engagements, and private sightings, the contradictions become impossible to ignore. Was this a calculated game of control? Was it fear of exposure? Or something more personal, driven by desire and opportunity? And what about the American figure? Who was he? And why did he matter so much? According to insiders, he was more than a fleeting acquaintance. There were patterns, repeated meetings, moments of emotional connection that went beyond casual friendship. He was allegedly someone who understood the pressures of visibility, someone who could navigate the tightrope of secrecy alongside Meghan. He wasn't just a shadow in her life. He was, by many accounts, a pivotal figure whose presence complicated relationships and intensified scrutiny, even if the public never knew it. But here's where it gets truly shocking. Some claims suggest that this relationship didn't merely coincide with public appearances. It coincided precisely with Meghan's most visible milestones. Major royal tours, charity events, and public engagements were allegedly timed to accommodate secret interactions. It's almost cinematic in scope. A duchess walking the halls of Buckingham or Windsor while, thousands of miles away, a secret life was quietly unfolding. The audacity, the timing, the planning. It's enough to leave anyone questioning what is reality and what is carefully crafted illusion. And yet, despite all this, the story doesn't fully make sense until we consider the stakes. What would this mean for Prince Harry? What would it mean for the child? For the public perception of the Sussexes? The monarchy itself? These aren't idle questions. They strike at the heart of loyalty, family, and responsibility. Imagine being in Harry's position, Knowing the public adoration your family receives, while simultaneously confronting allegations that your partner may have crossed boundaries that should never have been crossed. The emotional weight is staggering. There are also hints of whispers within the palace, subtle conversations in hallways, gestures that seem to communicate tension without words. Staff reportedly noticed moments of unease, cryptic phone calls, and fleeting expressions of worry. No one could piece together the full story, but the pattern of secrecy and disruption was there for those watching closely. And when combined with other evidence, private trips, unexplained absences, encrypted communications, the narrative begins to form. A narrative that raises more questions than it answers and sets the stage for revelations that will shock even the most ardent followers of royal life. What's even more astonishing is the skill with which this dual life was maintained. The public saw elegance, grace, and charm. The private story, according to allegations, was full of tension, risk, and potential betrayal. How does one balance these worlds? How do you smile for cameras while managing clandestine communications, secret rendezvous, and the possibility that discovery could shatter everything you've built? The contradictions are staggering. And now, the cliffhanger that will pull us into the next chapter. Insiders suggest that the first unmistakable signs of the affair were not discovered by journalists, not by paparazzi, and not by fans. They were discovered by someone inside Meghan's inner circle, someone who began piecing together evidence that would eventually expose cracks in the perfect image. But what came next would escalate the situation beyond anything anyone could have imagined, and it all started with a single, fateful message. Who was the American figure allegedly entwined in Meghan Markle's secret life, and why did his presence matter so much? That is the question that immediately grabs attention, and the answer is both surprising and complicated. Because this wasn't just a fleeting encounter or a casual friendship. According to multiple sources, it was a relationship layered with intrigue, discretion, and timing so precise that it could only have been intentional. But who could navigate the world of a high-profile duchess, evade the public eye, and still be considered a confidant or companion? The story begins with his background. Descriptions vary, but the common threads paint the picture of a man with charisma, intelligence, and connections in circles that Meghan had frequented before her marriage to Prince Harry. He was American, yes, but he wasn't just some Hollywood acquaintance or casual friend. Insiders claim he had business acumen, social savvy, and a network that extended into both media and political spheres. He was someone who could move comfortably in spaces where discretion was expected, yet the thrill of secrecy made the connection even more compelling. He was, allegedly, a person who understood the pressures of public life, and in some ways, could mirror the tension and scrutiny Meghan experienced daily. But what made him particularly significant was timing. Allegedly, their relationship coincided precisely with Meghan's pregnancy, a period that should have been defined by privacy, anticipation, and familial bonding. Instead, sources suggest there were meetings arranged with meticulous care, locations chosen to minimize exposure, trips strategically planned around royal engagements, and communications encrypted in ways designed to avoid even the most sophisticated scrutiny. The stakes were immense. Any misstep could have blown the entire story into public view, potentially causing irreparable damage to reputations, careers, and personal relationships. You might be asking yourself, how did Meghan manage such a tightrope? How could she maintain appearances while allegedly maintaining this connection? According to insiders, it was a combination of strategic planning and careful orchestration. Travel itineraries were adjusted subtly, public appearances were used as cover for private movements, and interactions were carefully controlled. There were reportedly moments where Meghan's schedule seemed innocuous but, in reality, was aligned with clandestine meetings. It's almost cinematic, one world seen by the public, another world hidden behind the carefully curated facade of royal duty. And then there are the communications. Emails, text messages, and private social media channels allegedly played a crucial role in sustaining this connection. Sources claim that encrypted messages were exchanged, often during times when the public assumed Meghan was engaging in charitable work or attending high-profile events. These communications were reportedly coded, indirect, and layered with ambiguity to avoid detection. For those observing, the pattern of secrecy becomes clear. Every movement, every message, and every meeting was calculated to avoid exposure. The sophistication of it all suggests more than a casual affair. It hints at planning, awareness, and intentional concealment. Consider the emotional dimension for a moment. If these allegations are accurate, the relationship required a level of duplicity that is difficult to comprehend. Pregnancy is a period of heightened emotion, vulnerability, and expectation. For Meghan to navigate the demands of a growing public life while allegedly sustaining this connection speaks to a complex interplay of desire, risk, and personal ambition. And for Harry, if he remained unaware, or even partially aware, the emotional impact would have been profound. The tension, the uncertainty, the subtle signs that something was amiss, these are not trivial. They're life-altering. The American lover allegedly had his own set of challenges navigating this connection. Sources suggest that he was acutely aware of the potential consequences. He knew that any misstep could make the story public. He understood the stakes of being linked to someone with Meghan's visibility and influence. And yet, according to the narrative, the relationship persisted, carefully managed and hidden from the prying eyes of both the public and the palace. The question arises, what drew him to this situation? Was it a matter of genuine connection, attraction, or opportunity? And conversely, what drove Meghan to maintain such a secret connection during a period of intense personal and public scrutiny? One particularly striking aspect of the story involves travel. According to reports, several trips to the United States were framed as professional or personal obligations, meetings, charity events, or business engagements. But insiders claim they were actually arranged to accommodate private interactions. Locations were carefully chosen to avoid paparazzi, private security arrangements were allegedly made, and schedules were reportedly manipulated to ensure discretion. For those watching closely, a pattern begins to emerge, a dual existence maintained with near-military precision. And yet, despite the careful orchestration, there were cracks. Staff began noticing subtle inconsistencies, calls that lasted longer than expected, unexplained absences, and moments of preoccupation that didn't align with public appearances. While these anomalies might seem minor in isolation, when pieced together, they begin to suggest a deliberate orchestration of events designed to mask another reality. It's the sort of detail that, in hindsight, can make the difference between seeing a picture of perfection and recognizing a carefully maintained facade. Audience, ask yourself, how much of what you see in public figures is authentic? How often do we accept appearances at face value, when, behind closed doors, reality may be far more complex, more human, and, in some cases, more scandalous? The alleged connection between Meghan Markle and this American figure challenges assumptions, forcing a reconsideration of perception versus reality, trust versus secrecy, and public image versus private choices. And there is one particularly explosive element that brings the story into sharp focus. Sources allege that one piece of evidence, a message, a photo, or a documented interaction, surfaced that left palace insiders stunned. It wasn't just a fleeting interaction. It was something that suggested a depth of involvement, a level of commitment that went beyond casual contact. The implications are profound. If verified, it not only confirms suspicions, but also rewrites the narrative of Meghan's life during a period of intense visibility. But here's where the cliffhanger lands, drawing us inexorably to the next chapter. Despite the sophistication, despite the careful concealment, something, or someone, noticed. An insider in Meghan's circle began connecting dots, observing interactions, and piecing together a story that would soon threaten to expose the secret. And what came next would not only challenge Meghan's carefully crafted image, but also threaten to shake the foundations of the Sussex legacy itself. What would it be like to carry a child, to feel life growing inside you, while living a secret so immense it could shatter your world if revealed? That's the haunting question surrounding Meghan Markle's alleged life during her pregnancy, according to multiple insider accounts. Because if the claims hold truth, this wasn't just an affair. It was a meticulously orchestrated secret that unfolded during one of the most vulnerable periods of her life. And yet, to the public, Meghan appeared calm, radiant, and in control. How could one reconcile the public image of serene motherhood with the storm of secrecy alleged behind closed doors? Pregnancy is a time when the body and emotions are in a state of constant change. For most, it is a period of preparation, introspection, and anticipation. But insiders claim that during Meghan's pregnancies, her private life told a very different story. Long before the public knew she was expecting, secret communications allegedly began surfacing between her and the American figure first introduced in the previous chapter. These messages weren't casual. They suggested coordination, careful timing, and a level of intimacy designed to avoid detection. And they were allegedly exchanged during moments when Meghan's public schedule would have required her attention elsewhere: charity visits, media appearances, and royal tours. Imagine the sheer logistics. Every trip abroad, every private meeting, every public appearance had to be meticulously planned. Insiders claim that flights were scheduled to avoid scrutiny, hotel stays booked under aliases, and private vehicles arranged to minimize exposure. Even the most ordinary-seeming day, such as a lunch with friends or a hospital checkup, allegedly became a cover for a secret rendezvous. The juxtaposition of the glamorous, controlled public life and the secret private life, according to accounts, was striking, almost cinematic. It's hard to fathom maintaining such balance, especially while carrying a child. And then there are the emotional stakes. Pregnancy heightens vulnerability, sensitivity, and emotional awareness. For Meghan, if these allegations are accurate, it meant negotiating the thrill and secrecy of a private relationship while simultaneously confronting the physical and emotional demands of motherhood. The tension must have been immense. What did she feel during these clandestine moments? Fear? Excitement? Guilt? The insiders we spoke to suggest all three, and more. Maintaining composure in public while living a secret life in private is no small feat. It requires a precision, a control over emotion and perception that few people possess. Yet, despite the secrecy, there were signs. Staff reportedly noticed inconsistencies, calls at unusual hours, discreet visitors, and fleeting conversations that seemed to hint at activities beyond the public schedule. There were moments when Meghan's attention appeared divided. Some sources suggest that even Prince Harry noticed subtle signs, glances that lingered too long at messages, unexpected trips, or unexplained preoccupations. But the full picture remained obscured, hidden beneath layers of planning, discretion, and calculated appearances. And here's the twist that makes the story particularly gripping. Some sources claim that the American lover was not merely a casual participant. He allegedly became a central figure in Meghan's life, someone who navigated her world with sophistication and discretion, understanding the dangers inherent in any exposure. His presence required careful timing, a delicate dance around palace protocols, security measures, and public scrutiny. Every message, every meeting, every trip carried risk. And yet, insiders claim, the connection persisted. Think about the contradiction for a moment. On one hand, Meghan was expected to embody the ideals of motherhood, nurturing, protective, and devoted. On the other, she was allegedly maintaining a secret life that, if revealed, could threaten those very ideals. The emotional tension is almost unbearable to consider. How does one reconcile care for an unborn child with clandestine meetings that could unravel everything? What drives a person to navigate such high stakes, especially when the public gaze is so intense? And yet, according to sources, the alleged affair may have provided a unique emotional escape. It was a way to exert control over a life increasingly dictated by protocol, expectation, and media scrutiny. It was a space where Meghan could assert agency, navigate desire, and maintain connection in a world that offered few options for privacy. The layers of secrecy, planning, and timing, insiders suggest, were part necessity, part personal strategy, and part emotional refuge. Of course, not everything was seamless. The alleged affair reportedly involved moments of tension, risk, and near exposure. Staff reportedly noticed anomalies, unexplained trips, sudden absences, and messages that left them uneasy. Even minor inconsistencies had the potential to unravel the carefully maintained narrative. The thrill of secrecy, insiders claim, was always tempered by fear. The fear that exposure would not only damage public perception, but could affect personal relationships, reputations, and the royal legacy. And then there's the question of the child. For a royal family, Every pregnancy is under scrutiny, every medical appointment monitored, every public appearance cataloged. If these allegations hold true, Meghan's alleged secret relationship intersected with the life of her child in ways that were entirely hidden from public view. Sources claim there were moments when private decisions intersected with the child's well-being, trips scheduled around prenatal appointments, secret visits coordinated to avoid detection, and an emotional balancing act that would challenge even the most seasoned adult. Audience, ask yourself this. How would you maintain composure if your personal life was under constant scrutiny while carrying a child? How do you navigate secrecy, desire, and the ethical implications of choices made in private while the world watches every move? The alleged affair forces us to consider human complexity, the contradictions between public expectation and private desire, and the lengths someone might go to maintain control over both. But here's where the cliffhanger strikes hardest. Insiders allege that a single communication, a message sent at a precise time, during a critical phase of Meghan's pregnancy, was intercepted. It suggested not only intimacy but coordination, planning, and a level of involvement that went beyond fleeting contact. This message, reportedly overlooked at first, would later become a key piece of evidence, the kind that could unravel a meticulously maintained facade. And what came next would escalate the story from whispers to a full-blown revelation that no one in Meghan's circle could ignore. What happens when secrecy starts to crack? When whispers begin to circulate, subtle observations accumulate, and the carefully constructed image of perfection begins to falter. That's the moment the palace began to stir, according to insiders. The allegations surrounding Meghan Markle's alleged affair didn't emerge from nowhere. They were whispered first in corridors, noticed in fleeting glances, and speculated about in private conversations. And yet, publicly, everything remained pristine, composed, and seemingly flawless. It began with small details. Staff members noticed subtle changes in Meghan's behavior during routine duties and public events. There were moments when she appeared distracted, calls that lingered longer than expected, and visits that couldn't be fully explained. For those accustomed to royal protocol, such deviations were unusual. But in a palace full of etiquette, hierarchy, and discretion, even the smallest anomaly can carry immense significance. Sources suggest that these seemingly minor incidents were the first signs of a larger secret. Insiders describe hushed conversations in hallways, between maids, footmen, and other staff. Whispered concerns about unusual patterns, unexpected travel, and private visitors created an undercurrent of speculation. It's important to understand that in the palace, silence and discretion are paramount. Gossip is discouraged, and breaches can have severe consequences. Yet, the tension was palpable. Staff reportedly began noticing that Meghan's schedule didn't always match public announcements, and subtle inconsistencies were recorded in diaries and logs. These weren't overtly scandalous at first, but the seeds of doubt were planted. Audience, imagine the tension. Picture being in a palace where every face, every movement, every glance can signal something deeper. Imagine overhearing snippets of conversation, noticing behaviors that don't align with expectations, and trying to piece together what they mean. That's exactly the environment insiders say was charged with speculation during Meghan's pregnancy. And while no one wanted to act hastily, the rumors began to take on a life of their own. One particularly telling example involved a late-night meeting. Sources claim that a trusted member of staff noticed a visitor leaving Meghan's quarters at an unusual hour. The visitor, reportedly American, was described as courteous but enigmatic, someone whose presence didn't fit any publicly known schedule. While initially dismissed as a professional engagement, the observation was noted and quietly shared among a few palace employees. These small moments, repeated over time, created a pattern that, when combined with intercepted communications and travel inconsistencies, suggested something extraordinary and potentially scandalous was happening behind closed doors. The palace is a world of dualities. Public ceremony and private reality often exist side by side, but the discrepancy between them can be telling. Insider accounts suggest that, during this period, staff members began to question the alignment between Meghan's public engagements and her private life. While appearing composed, elegant, and attentive at charity galas or media events, The Duchess allegedly managed a network of secret meetings and communications that staff could only guess at. This duality, according to insiders, was both fascinating and alarming. It created an atmosphere of tension, uncertainty, and suspicion that no one could ignore. And here's where it gets even more intriguing. Some staff reportedly noticed coded language in communications, hints dropped in conversations, and subtle gestures that suggested meetings or messages were happening outside public scrutiny. Observers claimed these were small, almost imperceptible signs, but they were there for those trained to notice. A word used incorrectly, a pause that seemed too long, a slight adjustment in schedule. These became pieces of a puzzle pointing toward an emerging secret. It's the kind of observation that, in hindsight, can be the difference between understanding a simple anomaly and uncovering a full-blown scandal. Audience, consider this. What would you do if you noticed repeated inconsistencies in the behavior of someone with such prominence? Would you speak up? Would you investigate quietly? In the palace, discretion is survival. Staff reportedly debated these questions among themselves, balancing loyalty, curiosity, and the risk of discovery. And as whispers spread, so did concern. A network of speculation began to form, quietly, carefully, and inevitably moving toward revelation. Insiders also report that the whispers weren't confined to staff. Friends and associates of Meghan began noticing subtle changes as well. Invitations to gatherings, private calls, and unexplained absences fueled speculation in social circles outside the palace. Some accounts suggest that these friends attempted to piece together the emerging pattern, connecting seemingly unrelated events, meetings, and messages. The atmosphere of curiosity and caution intensified, and the first seeds of a potential exposure were sown. And yet, despite all this, the public remained unaware. Every appearance Meghan made was flawless. Every gesture, every smile, every public statement aligned perfectly with the image she had cultivated over years. The contrast between private speculation and public perfection was stark. It's this dichotomy, public grace versus private rumor, that makes the allegations so compelling. It's also what sets the stage for the dramatic unfolding of events that follow. But here's where the tension escalates. One staffer, who had been quietly monitoring patterns and behaviors, reportedly witnessed something that went beyond speculation, a meeting, a conversation, or an exchange that suggested undeniable involvement with the American figure. This observation, according to insiders, shifted the rumors from possibility to probability. The whispers, once intangible, became tangible evidence of behavior that challenged the image of perfection Meghan had cultivated. And that leads us to the cliffhanger. The staffer, after witnessing this interaction, faced a choice. Do they speak out, risking career and reputation, or do they remain silent and let the secret persist? The decision would ultimately set in motion a chain of events that no one in the palace could have anticipated. What came next would escalate from hushed whispers to a revelation that had the potential to shake not just Meghan's image, but the entire Sussex legacy. What if the truth was literally hidden in plain sight? That's the allegation surrounding Meghan Markle's private communications during the period of her pregnancy. According to insiders, the affair, if it truly existed, was facilitated and sustained through a web of secret messages, encrypted emails, and private social media channels. But this wasn't casual texting or harmless conversation. The claims suggest a sophisticated operation designed to evade discovery, one that required timing, precision, and an understanding of both technology and human behavior. Imagine for a moment the pressure. Every message sent had stakes attached, the risk of exposure, the impact on relationships, and the potential to destroy a public image painstakingly crafted over years. According to sources, Meghan allegedly used multiple communication channels, often layering encryption with coded language. Some messages were said to be indirect, hinting at meetings or emotional exchanges without explicitly stating details. Others allegedly contained logistical instructions, carefully phrased to avoid interception or suspicion. The level of sophistication, insiders claim, was extraordinary for someone navigating both pregnancy and public scrutiny. Short, punchy messages were reportedly combined with longer, reflective ones, creating an emotional cadence that concealed intention while revealing personal connection. It's the kind of duality that both excites and terrifies. Imagine reading a seemingly innocent note, only to realize it carries multiple layers of meaning, a secret map of private rendezvous and intimate interaction. According to reports, this is exactly what staff and close observers began noticing. A pattern of messages that didn't align with publicly known schedules, a rhythm of communication that suggested more than friendship. And then there's timing. Sources claim that the messages were often sent during periods when Meghan was publicly engaged in official duties. A late-night email, a text during a charity gala, or a private message while traveling to a high-profile event. All of these were reportedly carefully timed to reduce risk of discovery. Some messages were allegedly erased or sent through accounts designed to leave no trace. In other instances, they were routed through intermediaries, trusted friends, or professional contacts to further obscure the trail. It's almost cinematic, the way secrecy was woven into routine life, creating a world behind the public facade. But let's talk about emotional stakes. Pregnancy heightens vulnerability, and every exchange allegedly carried emotional weight. According to insiders, the communications weren't purely logistical, they were intimate, personal, and at times emotionally charged. Words were chosen deliberately to convey desire, reassurance, and connection, all while maintaining the veneer of innocence if discovered. The risk, the emotional intensity, and the clandestine nature of these messages created a pressure cooker environment, one that required constant vigilance and, allegedly, remarkable composure from Meghan. Audience, ask yourself this. How far would someone go to maintain secrecy while simultaneously navigating intense personal and public pressures? How do you reconcile the excitement of private intimacy with the fear of public exposure, especially when carrying a child? The allegations suggest a high-stakes balancing act, where one misstep could unravel everything. The complexity of the communications alone, messages sent, deleted, encrypted, coded, paints a picture of careful orchestration and emotional tension that few could sustain. Insiders also claim there were instances where the communications nearly exposed the secret. A message misdirected, a notification left visible, or a digital footprint that could have been discovered. Each time, the alleged parties reportedly adjusted tactics, further refining methods to maintain discretion. The pattern suggests an awareness of risk and a proactive approach to managing exposure. The story, in this light, becomes not only one of alleged intimacy, but of meticulous strategy. But communications weren't limited to digital channels. Some reports suggest in-person notes, hand-delivered messages, and even subtle cues during public interactions. Staff and observers reportedly noticed fleeting exchanges, gestures, and words that seemed insignificant at first but, in context, aligned with patterns revealed later. These small moments contributed to an emerging narrative, a story that slowly took shape in private while public perception remained unshaken. And here's the twist. The very channels designed for secrecy may have left traces. According to insiders, investigators and journalists pieced together patterns from timing, account activity, and corroborating eyewitness accounts. While no single piece of evidence was conclusive, the cumulative effect suggested a network of hidden communications that supported the alleged affair. The story that began as whispers in hallways was now taking on tangible form. Audience, consider this. What does it say about the lengths someone will go to maintain privacy, secrecy, and personal agency under extraordinary public scrutiny? How do you interpret a life where appearances are flawless, but behind the facade, an entirely different reality exists? It's both fascinating and unnerving, forcing a reconsideration of what we assume about public figures and the lives they lead beyond the cameras. And the cliffhanger. Insiders claim that one specific message, sent at a critical moment during Meghan's pregnancy, was intercepted by a member of her inner circle. It wasn't just a note. It allegedly contained instructions for a meeting that, if confirmed, could provide the first irrefutable link between Meghan and the American figure. And what happened after that interception would set off a chain reaction that no one could have predicted, one that threatened to expose the hidden life behind the perfect public image. Who truly knows the secrets we keep, and who silently watches as our private lives unfold behind a carefully constructed public image? That's the question at the heart of Meghan Markle's alleged secret life, according to insiders. Because if the affair with the American figure during her pregnancy is true, It wasn't just about clandestine meetings and encrypted messages. It involved a network of friends, confidants, and associates, each playing a role, whether knowingly or unknowingly, in keeping the secret alive. It starts with the inner circle, the friends who were close enough to notice subtle changes, to hear whispers, and perhaps even to witness moments that contradicted the polished image Meghan presented to the world. Sources suggest that these friends were torn between loyalty and disbelief. Some may have suspected something, yet chose silence either out of fear, discretion, or admiration. Others may have genuinely been unaware of the depth of the situation, seeing only the fragments of a story they could not fully comprehend. But the key point is that the web of secrecy wasn't just about Meghan. It relied on the complicity, conscious or not, of those around her. Think about that for a moment. Imagine being close enough to a public figure to witness subtle inconsistencies, late-night calls, unexplained absences, emotional shifts, but not knowing whether to trust your instincts or dismiss them. The insiders describe a delicate dance, friends observing, interpreting, and often rationalizing behaviors that didn't fit the public narrative. Every casual conversation, every subtle gesture, became a potential clue. And according to accounts, some friends did begin to connect the dots, noticing patterns that hinted at more than casual interactions or innocent distractions. One of the most revealing aspects, according to insiders, was the behavior of friends who may have acted as intermediaries, relaying messages, providing cover stories, or otherwise facilitating secrecy without being fully aware of the stakes. These individuals became, in effect, unwitting participants in the maintenance of the alleged affair. How much did they know? Did they suspect the truth and stay silent? Or were they truly oblivious, caught in the mechanics of a life carefully orchestrated to appear flawless? These are questions that remain unanswered, but they illustrate the complexity of the situation. Audience, imagine the emotional burden on these friends. How do you navigate loyalty to someone you care about while grappling with suspicion that could shake your perception of reality? And what about the moral weight? Do you intervene, confront, or stay silent? According to insiders, some friends chose the latter, perhaps out of fear, perhaps out of a desire to preserve relationships, and in doing so, became part of the shadow network that concealed events from the public eye. But there were others who were closer, more perceptive, and perhaps more morally compelled to act. Reports suggest that one or two friends began documenting unusual behavior, keeping records of communications, visits, and schedules that didn't align with public appearances. These observations were made in whispers, in private messages, in moments removed from the glare of cameras and the scrutiny of palace protocol. And while these individuals did not publicly expose the situation at the time, their notes and recollections would later become critical in piecing together the alleged timeline of events. The intrigue deepens when considering the emotional dynamics within the friend group. Allegedly, there were tensions, subtle rivalries, unspoken judgments, and divided loyalties. Some friends may have envied the influence and visibility of Meghan's life, while others were genuinely concerned about her choices and the potential consequences. This mix of admiration, envy, loyalty, and worry created an environment charged with emotion, making it fertile ground for rumors, speculation, and the careful concealment of truths that could, if exposed, alter relationships permanently. And here's a fascinating twist. Some insiders claim that friends were actually part of orchestrated cover-ups, intentionally or otherwise. For example, meetings that seemed innocuous to observers were allegedly designed to provide cover for private rendezvous. Travel plans, social engagements, and even charity appearances were reportedly coordinated in ways that allowed Meghan to maintain both her public image and private activities. In this scenario, friends were both participants and unwitting enablers, their actions critical to sustaining the dual life she allegedly led. Audience, consider this. How often do we truly know the lives of those closest to us? How easily could small secrets escalate into full-blown revelations if the wrong person notices or chooses to act? The alleged involvement of friends adds a layer of human complexity, loyalty, fear, and complicity intertwined with secrecy, creating a web that is nearly impossible to untangle from the outside. The emotional stakes were also incredibly high. The pregnancy, The public appearances and the scrutiny of the royal family added pressure not only on Meghan but also on those around her. Friends, acting in varying degrees of awareness, were forced to navigate ethical dilemmas, manage rumors, and sometimes cover for activities that, if revealed, could have devastating consequences. The network of friends, insiders say, became both shield and witness, a shadow audience privy to the intricacies of a secret life. And now, the cliffhanger that propels us into the next chapter. One of these friends reportedly crossed a threshold. They began actively questioning the nature of Meghan's communications, tracking patterns, and connecting the dots with the American figure. This was no longer casual observation, it was investigation. And what came next would bring hidden communications, encrypted messages, and private rendezvous into the spotlight in ways that no one anticipated, setting the stage for revelations that could not be ignored. How do you hide a secret in a world where every move is scrutinized, every photo dissected, and every comment analyzed? That's the extraordinary challenge allegedly faced by Meghan Markle during the period of her secret life. According to insiders, it wasn't just about clandestine meetings, encrypted communications, or observant friends. It was also about controlling the narrative, managing media exposure, and carefully orchestrating public appearances to maintain the perfect image. The stakes were immense. One misstep could instantly turn whispers into headlines, speculation into scandal. From the very beginning, Meghan's life was under a global microscope. Paparazzi followed her footsteps, journalists tracked her every engagement, and social media amplified every detail. Yet insiders claim that despite the intensity of scrutiny, the alleged affair persisted, shielded by a sophisticated system of media management, public misdirection, and strategic appearances. Every public outing was a calculated display of poise, a perfectly timed smile, a carefully chosen outfit, a subtle gesture that conveyed grace and control. To the casual observer, she appeared flawless. But beneath that carefully curated facade, according to the allegations, a different story was unfolding. The first line of defense, insiders say, was control over information. Meghan allegedly maintained multiple channels of communication, each carefully separated from public oversight. When rumors began to circulate, even the faintest ones, they were managed quickly with denials, clarifications, or diversionary statements designed to protect her image. Sources suggest that the timing of press releases, statements to journalists, and social media posts was orchestrated to distract attention from moments of suspicion. Every photograph released, every interview conducted, was designed to reinforce a narrative of elegance, dedication, and composure. But as we know, the media is relentless. Reports began surfacing, minor at first, subtle in tone, almost easily ignored. Observant journalists noticed patterns, unexplained trips, curious visitor activity, and discrepancies between public appearances and reported schedules. While these stories never made front-page headlines initially, they were noted, tracked, and archived, waiting for corroboration. According to insiders, this created a pressure point. The alleged affair was a shadow hovering over the public image, a secret that, if exposed, could cause a media storm of unprecedented intensity. Audience, ask yourself this: how would you manage such exposure? How do you navigate the relentless gaze of the world while trying to hide something that could destroy not only your image, but also the lives of those closest to you? That's exactly what, insiders claim, made this situation so high stakes. It wasn't just about personal choice. It was about surviving in a world where public perception is both power and liability. And then there are the cover-ups. According to reports, when hints of irregularities began emerging, unexplained trips, messages, or sightings, the response was swift. Media teams were allegedly deployed to redirect attention, manage narratives, and ensure that public appearances remained unblemished. Every potential leak was addressed with either clarification or distraction, reinforcing the image of perfection while preventing speculation from gaining traction. Some insiders even describe a system where potential witnesses were coached, schedules adjusted, and narratives reinforced to maintain secrecy. It was, in effect, a multi-layered strategy designed to protect both personal and public stakes. But even the best cover-ups leave traces. Insiders suggest that staff, friends, and associates began noticing discrepancies. Meetings that couldn't be explained, visitors whose presence seemed unusual, and messages that appeared out of context. These inconsistencies, while minor individually, began forming patterns. And as patterns emerged, so did concern. Who could be trusted to keep secrets? Which messages were innocent, and which carried hidden intent? The tension, sources say, was almost unbearable. There's also the element of irony. The very tools designed to control the narrative, media management, PR strategy, and strategic appearances, may have inadvertently highlighted inconsistencies. Observant journalists, piecing together timing, appearances, and private communications, began to see a story that didn't match the public portrayal. While nothing was confirmed at first, the hints were there. Every flawless smile, every elegant pose, every public statement was potentially masking a private world that contradicted the image being presented. Audience, consider this. What would it feel like to live a life where every smile is calculated, every gesture analyzed, and every word scrutinized, all while hiding a secret that could destroy everything? That is the tension insiders claim defined Meghan's daily existence during this period. And it's not just the personal stakes. This was a story that, if revealed, could reverberate across the monarchy, the media, and global audiences who had followed her journey so closely. And then comes the twist. Some insiders allege that the very journalists tasked with reporting on Meghan may have been unwittingly influenced by carefully planted narratives. Strategic appearances, timing of interviews, and selective disclosures created a public perception that appeared authentic, while concealing the alleged secret. It's almost cinematic in scope, a shadowy network of influence, misdirection, and subtle orchestration designed to maintain the illusion of perfection while the reality of the affair remained hidden. But here's the cliffhanger that drives the story forward. Despite the meticulous management, one journalist reportedly uncovered evidence, timelines, digital footprints, or accounts from staff that suggested the public narrative might not be the full story. This discovery, insiders claim, would set in motion a series of investigations, observations, and connections that could finally expose the hidden life behind the flawless public image. And what came next would escalate the drama to a level that no one in Meghan's circle could have anticipated. What happens when the hidden life of a public figure collides with the unyielding structure of royalty? That's the question at the heart of the alleged fallout surrounding Meghan Markle. According to insiders, as whispers of the secret affair and hidden communications began to circulate, the palace, normally a fortress of discretion, began to stir. The implications were monumental. This wasn't just a personal scandal. It was a potential upheaval in the delicate balance of the Sussex legacy, the monarchy, and public perception. The first signs of tension reportedly appeared in private corridors of the palace. Staff who had long adhered to strict protocols suddenly found themselves navigating murky waters. Meetings that were once routine became fraught with implication. Courtiers reportedly noticed subtle changes in Meghan's demeanor, moments of anxiety, brief lapses in composure, and interactions that seemed unusually calculated. These weren't public displays. They were private cues that suggested a storm was brewing behind the scenes. Prince Harry, in particular, is said to have been caught in a whirlwind of confusion and emotional turmoil. Insiders suggest he became aware, in fragments, of inconsistencies in Meghan's schedule, subtle hints from staff, and rumors circulating among close associates. The sources describe a man torn between loyalty, love, and growing suspicion. A man forced to reconcile the image of his wife as a devoted partner with the emerging signs of secrecy. Imagine the emotional complexity of being in his position, balancing public duty with private doubt, protecting a family while confronting the possibility of betrayal. Audience, ask yourself this. How would you react if someone you trusted appeared to live a dual life during one of the most intimate moments of your shared journey? How do you process love, loyalty, and suspicion simultaneously, especially under the pressure of constant public attention? These are the stakes Harry allegedly faced, and insiders say the strain was palpable. The palace itself reportedly began to take note. Royal advisors and staff, deeply attuned to both protocol and reputation, allegedly started connecting the dots. Unexplained trips, discrepancies in public statements, and unusual patterns of communication raised eyebrows. There were meetings behind closed doors, discussions about appearances, and debates over how, or if, to address emerging concerns. The balance between discretion and accountability, insiders suggest, was delicate. One wrong move could generate headlines, scandal, and public outrage. And yet, even amid growing internal tension, the public continued to see Meghan as poised, charitable, and devoted. The duality is striking. A woman managing both personal complexity and public expectation, maintaining a flawless image while a hidden life allegedly unfolded. Sources describe this as a carefully maintained facade, one that required constant vigilance, strategic appearances, and impeccable timing. The contrast between public perfection and private intrigue, insiders say, became increasingly pronounced, adding to the sense of suspense surrounding the alleged affair. But the stakes escalated further when rumors reportedly reached the ears of other members of the royal family. Prince William, King Charles, and other senior figures are said to have reacted with varying degrees of shock, concern, and strategic consideration. How do you